Hello there, people of the internet. This right here is my Vetterli 7087. I believe that's the designation on this particular one. And I believe it's a 10.4 millimeter chambering. This right here should still be chambered in its original cartridge. A lot of these were converted to 6.5 Carcano way back in the day. This happens to be one that was not. Whenever I got this, it was from RTI, and it was in really bad shape. It was super rusty, so I went ahead and I did a really, I was going to say a really mild refurbishment, but it's a lot more in depth. This was a really difficult one to do because it was in really bad shape. And there's definitely some touch-ups that I still want to do with this thing, but I'm probably not going to get around to that for a while. This is good enough for my wall hanger purposes for this rifle, so I'm going to go ahead and make a video on this. So whenever I finish those touch-ups, I'll probably do a follow-up video on it sometime down the road. If you want to be around for that, then subscribe to the channel, because you'll be around for that, and you are definitely among the right crowd if you like this type of stuff. So this right here is a rifle that whenever I got from RTI, it was in significantly bad shape. We definitely still have some rust wear like back here and a little bit on this magazine. It's not quite as smooth as I would like it, but normally whenever I do my refurbishments, I try to make it to where the firearm does not look like it's been refurbished. I try to make it continue to look original, and the way that I do that is well, I got a bunch of different processes that I do for refurbishing a firearm. Specifically, what I do is I try to leave as much of the original as possible, and I just kind of do touch-ups along it versus like sanding down everything and just starting from scratch, right? So in the case of this right here, the bluing that I used, I did go with a cold blue, and I also did a rust blue. And the reason why I did the rust blue was because this already had such significant rust with it. Long story short, I was trying to experiment with that to see what I could manage to pull off. And then I did a cold bluing on it, and I actually used, well, normally with a cold bluing you would want to do like an even coat on everything, but what I do is I actually take a paintbrush and I do like splotches all over the thing to give it that retro look. I can't quite remember what it's called, but it makes the rifle look like it's been old and worn and whatnot, and that's kind of what I do with all of my firearms refurbishments. This way they don't look like they're brand new out of the factory. This way you can tell that they've been immediately refurbished. So this one right here definitely has that aesthetic of still being quite old. The barrel, I think I went a little too significant on the bluing with the barrel. I'm probably going to have to wear that down a little bit to give it that aged look, because that barrel just came out too fantastic. Too fantastic for my taste. Back here, like I said, we definitely still have a few little issues with some rust damage. I would like to get that out of there. Got a little bit back here, got a little bit right here on the magazine. The bluing is a little bit dark for what I would expect one of these rifles to have. I'm not entirely sure how blued these rifles were whenever they first came out of the factory. Yeah, I mean, I did some experiments with this right here. This right here is actually a little bit less blued than the rest of the rifles, so I would like to have the rest of the rifle kind of blued like this versus the real dark bluing that we see all over it. I definitely gotta do a little bit of oiling and touch up on this as well. But bottom line, the big important thing is that this is no longer a ball of rust, and it's now something that I can actively and comfortably use, so we don't have to worry about this thing continuing to take damage from the rust and no doubtedly salts and corrosive materials that were still inside of it. This being chambered in 10.4 millimeter by whatever it was that Italy was doing. That is a black powder round, and those black powder rounds are corrosive. So if you got yourself corrosive salt inside of a firearm that's been sitting around for a while, yeah, I'm willing to bet a lot of that corrosive salt was still inside this thing. So if I would have just left it all rusty and whatnot, it would have slowly continued to degrade over time. It was already in rough shape whenever I had gotten it. There's a lot of pitting all over this thing, on the internals, on the everything. However, that being said, our locking surfaces, I got up in there and I got a little borescope that I use and I checked everything out. Our locking surfaces still seem to be good. They don't seem to be pitted or destroyed to the point to where I would feel uncomfortable firing this thing. That being said, there's no rear sight on this thing and the barrel is a sewer pipe. So even if I did fire this thing, I would not get much accuracy. But yeah, if I manage to find the ammunition for it, I might take this thing out to fire it just because. Oh yes, I learned something about the Vetterli system. I definitely got to oil this thing. I learned something about the Vetterli system that I did not know until I disassembled and really went through this rifle to get it up and going and looking proper and whatnot. Turns out that our retaining wedge right here, which is it's the wedge that retains the bolt, keeps it inside of the receiver. You take out this wedge and the bolt is able to come out. That also serves as an out of battery safety right here on the locking surface of our bolts. This is actually a separate piece, and that separate piece fits into like a little wedge that comes out of our that is an extractor. Yeah, this whole piece right here, that's the extractor that comes out the front. The locking surface sits on a little wedge that comes out of the extractor, and the extractor actually pushes itself up to where that wedge is catching on the locking surface, so you can't turn this bolt. And what makes that wedge get pushed down is this wedge right here that holds the bolt in place. That wedge pushes down on the spring tension on the extractor, and that pushes that wedge out of the way so you can rotate your locking system. I was trying to close the Vetterli whenever I was reassembling it. There we go. Yeah, definitely gotta oil that. I was trying to close the Vetterli whenever I was trying to reassemble it, and I could not for the life of me figure out what was going wrong with it. And turns out I did not have the locking wedge in the proper place. So once I put that back in its proper place, then I no longer had to worry about that. So if you can't close your Vetterli, try putting the locking wedge in the proper place, and that's probably going to be your issue. So what do you guys think of the refurbishment? The stock, I basically just cleaned it up. This is one of those ones where I'm not sure if I want to do more work on it, because it turned out fairly decently for what it was, but it definitely could do better. I still wanted to keep that old look with it. I didn't want it to look like a brand new rifle. I wanted to give it that retro look. However, that being said, this thing was just it was so bad. This thing was so bad. The stock, no cracks or anything like that, at least nothing all that significant. I basically just cleaned it up a little bit. We definitely have a lot of worn finish on it. I'm probably going to just like oil it and let it sit in that oil, and that will be all I do with it. I might sand and stain it down the road. I'm not entirely sure about that because the stock, the finish, it's basically gone at this point. So yeah, like I said, I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that. I might just leave that one as is. I do like the way that the Vetterli metal turned out. I like the way that it looks. Yeah, I'm actually very pleased with this rifle. Definitely have some touch-up spots though, like that right there. I want to get rid of. I would like to do a little bit better with these rust damages and whatnot. This particular one was made in 1889. God knows what it's seen. All right, well, this is the overview of the Vetterli. Thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. I guess I'll show you guys this. You can very clearly see that AOI on the back of the Vetterli now. That is awesome. Alright, you guys go off. Have yourself a fantastic day. I'll see you all on the next one.
once I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.